invite on stage Thomas Cser from PriceFX, and he will talk about scaling enterprise sales in EMEA, lessons from SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and scale-ups. Probably some of the scale-ups that I know, right? Welcome. Welcome on stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are you doing? Come on. I'm not Beyoncé, but between Beyoncé and the funeral, there is some room. Good morning or good afternoon. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, before I get going to talk about scaling sales in EMEA, Europe, that small region, who's in the audience? Where are founders? Founders? Cool. Where are investors? Investors? Who considers themselves as developers? Okay. Who consider themselves as salespeople? All right. Man, you are all in sales somehow. But thanks for joining this next 20, 25 minutes or so. Hey, my name is Thomas. I was actually born in Cluj, but at the age of 4, my parents jumped the border. I was able to follow with my older brother, who sits somewhere there in the audience. And 40 years, a bit more later, we are back here on stage. Looking forward to this. I grew up in Germany, lived a little bit in Cape Town, but what's relevant, I guess, for here is I worked 25 years for pretty much all of those large US tech companies who all tried, in a way or the other, to scale sales in Europe. And they were all successful. You all know these names. And I would love to share the insights from those 20 plus years. And yeah, I literally sold software, from Cape Town to Helsinki and from Abu Dhabi to Lisbon. And here's the story. How do I click, by the way? Just asking for a friend. Maybe this one here, huh? There you go. I think for most people here, it's pretty clear that EMEA is not just a region, right? We all are very aware that we have, dozens of cultures. We have hundreds of subcultures. We have many languages and all of that. So for most people in Europe, that's pretty clear. I guess in the US as well in the meantime. It's a mosaic. It's a beautiful mosaic, but it's the most bureaucratic mosaic you might find out there. And it's pretty clear, and that's what I've learned the hard way, that enterprise sales and single playbooks for enterprise sales always fail. You have to adopt and adapt. And to give you an example, back at Salesforce, we looked at our biggest 50 customers and how we won deals there. And we wanted to find patterns, like common patterns, where we would be like, hey, how did we win these deals? What were common themes to actually win them over? And after we did the analysis, we ended up with 49 buckets to put these 50 customers in. Why? Well, because they were in different countries, in different industries, different buying centers, different digital maturity levels, different stakeholder groups. In other words, there were no two customers following the same playbook in order to win them over. So it's a highly customized and unique way when you are doing enterprise sales. And that's the reality. Specifically, and this is where I come from, when you are looking to close bigger tickets. It's very different if you are selling into small and medium businesses with 10K average ACV tickets. I'm talking about the 6-7-digit type of annual recurring revenue tickets you are selling. Now, what's also relevant to understand in EMEA is that FOMO, and everybody, I guess, knows the term, fear of missing out, is not that relevant over here. Here it's much more about FOMO, and that's the fear of messing up. So it's about de-risking when you are selling, and not so much about showing how amazing you are and, hey, let's jump all on into this right away. Now, every part of EMEA has a very, very different sales DNA. You know, the DACH region, which is by itself 3 countries and 5, 6, 7 languages, you know, they care about logic and documented proof. In the Middle East, it's all about relationships. You know, you need to go there, you have to see people, you have to smoke a shisha, even if you're not smoking, and things like that. France has a very special sense of national pride that shapes how you sell. And of course, the language, knowing the language, speaking the native language is key to that, right? The Nordics, they want clarity, they want ROI, they love being very direct, and you know always where you are. That's how different this EMEA region is. There is no universal playbook. There are patterns you need to master. I remember a German customer asked me for a business case. Pretty normal, right? Yeah, of course. Here's our software. This is what you can do. Here's the business case to it. But here's the twist. In the US, you would have checked the box and you move on. Thank you for your business case. Looking good. Let's go. In Germany, the guy went out, hired a third-party consultant to validate my business case. To not just validate the business drivers against their current state, but to validate the business drivers against other software vendors' business drivers. And then to come up with the delta, to then try to negotiate back on price and costs. So where in the US, it seems to be a check-in-the-box exercise to get a business case over, in Germany, it seems to be like the special project for the CFO. Like that's the reality, and that's the difference. Now, I think one common pattern you will find in Europe for all the good and bad is regulation. Regulation is everywhere. Now, after 2 decades in this field, I've seen like 3 main levers of success, how to get it right. And of course, it's about people. It's about hiring the right people, and then you design the org around them. Don't lift the org from the US and then shift it over to Europe. That won't work, right? Localize everything, and I mean everything. It's all the way from messaging to pricing and to the people employed. You need people in the region talking to your customers. And then, super important, build an ecosystem of trust. In Europe, trust closes more deals than your tech solution. If you believe it's all about tech superiority, you will fail. Customers buy from people, and they buy because they trust you. Now, double-clicking on this topic of hiring, and of course, your first hire is the most important one. Now, here's the good news. In sales, it's pretty easy to measure your first hire, right? Do they close deals, yes or no? It's pretty easy. It's measurable. And hence, if you start scaling, obviously, and you hire your first 5 go-to-market people, it's fairly easy to measure them. The challenge with enterprise sales is if you have a 6 to 12-month sales cycle, it's pretty obvious that you might not see the result immediately. You will need to give it a year before you then actually can decide, is that person doing good or bad? And important is, and please no offense, because I know that there are people from Google, but don't only look for the ex-Google and the ex-Salesforce people. Don't hire the hero of the past. Hire someone who is local, who understands how to navigate the local culture. Think of them as mini CEOs. To another example, we hired a person in Austria who was not into tech before. He was selling spare parts in the automotive space. But he was a sales guy, through and through. And he was local, he was Austrian. On top, his father used to be a senior legal counsel of one of the big tier ones in Austria. And we used him as the anchor in Austria. And he was highly successful, just because he had that network of trust, the ecosystem, the language. You think it's a German-speaking country, you can send over somebody from Hamburg to Austria to sell? Good freaking luck, right? It just won't fly. If you're Bavarian, you might survive, but if you're coming from the north, it's not flying. So I'm very convinced that cultural proximity always trumps expertise. It's better to have the Austrian local guy talking to a customer only knowing half of the answers versus having the guy from UK flying into Vienna and being the super expert of your product and trying to explain how everything is working. If you compare these two approaches, I would always bet on the local, potentially less experienced person. Another example, I spoke to a French senior exec. He was running a large telco there. And we literally started the call, and his first sentence after he said bonjour was, "I hate you Americans." And there was no American or US citizen in this call. We were all international Europeans. But of course, we all worked for a Silicon Valley company, and we had to take the call in English, because my French is good enough for the bar, but not good enough for such a business chat. And I promise you, if there was a French-speaking person in this call, this would have been a total different game, like completely. So, let's break down what localization actually means. And I mentioned the proof and documentation in Germany. You know, they want to have these 40-page decks with all the bullet points and all the answers. They usually go through an RFP. You know the spiel. French buyers, they want une vision, the vision. They usually they want to know who else is using it and why they are using it. References is pretty high and important in France. Nordics want transparency, very clear pricing, clear benefits. Remembering that time I walked into a Finnish customer, and they are super direct, right, in your face. It's unbelievable. I love it because I'm German. I feel German, but kind of I'm used to this directness. But good luck if you are maybe American or a very nuanced British person. So I walk into this meeting, and the guy pulls me out and says, "Look at this list." And it had like 20 words on it. And he said, "This is the bullshit list. Please, if you present, avoid these words." And it had the usual words in there like digital transformation and, you know, operational and excellence and, I don't know, like amazing experience and all of these words you just use all the time. It was so difficult to avoid these words when we had to do the presentation. But that's how direct they are, right? They just tell you, hey, this is a bullshit list. Don't use these words. In UK, at least that's true for me, but that's what I hear from others, you walk out of a meeting and you don't know if they stabbed you in the back or if they were just super polite. I don't know if you experienced that. If you are not a native UK English person, it's super difficult to understand the nuances between the two. And I literally ask people on my team who are born native UK citizens, like, hey, was it a stab in the back or was this a successful meeting? And they would tell me, right? But it's how it is. And Middle East, you have to shake hands, man. You have to be there. You have to look in their eyes, you shake hands. Funny enough, in the Middle East, you agree on something, you shake hands, but it doesn't mean anything in terms of timing. It doesn't, you agree on something, but does it happen tomorrow or in a month's time? Inshallah, right? That's the Middle East. Get used to it. And hey, by the way, if I'm too polarizing or too stereotyping, I'm sorry, but that's my experience. All right, did I go too fast? Too far? Oh, yeah, sorry. Now, talking about regulation, I mentioned it. It's this regulation mosaic or bureaucracy mosaic across Europe. Regulation is obviously painful, right? I mean, you have all these ISO, TSAC, you name it, certifications. Sometimes in order to even get on a supplier list of a customer, it takes you 4 months. To even be able to talk to them, it takes you 4 months, and you have to fill out and have to do all these various environmental, whatever type of questionnaires. It's pretty intense. But here's the thing. If you get this right from the start, country by country by country, it is also an amazing competitive advantage because it serves you as an entry barrier for your competitors who didn't sort that shit out, right? So think about it more as okay, you have to go through it, but once you have it, it really speeds you up and helps you to land better, especially with these bigger customers out there. It's so important. In Switzerland, one customer told us, hey, you understood what's important here. And they chose us, and he showed me the ranking. He showed me like all the pluses and minuses with our software solution versus another one. And we were second. We were second. He still chose us because he said, you understood me and us and what's important in Switzerland. So again, localization wins. Talking about regulation and privacy and GDPR, you all are aware that we have this beautiful software out there, and all of them have it more or less in the meantime, whether it's Gong or Glyphic or all of these solutions, they offer call recordings. So they record every prospect and every customer call you're having. And then it's great because you don't have to take notes, it will summarize it, it will give you all the key action items, it will help you to follow up, it will create an email, draft an email for you, send it out. Amazing. But here's the thing. This German customer I talked to recently, he came up in the Teams call and his first question was, is this recorded? And I said, yeah. And he hung up. That was it. I couldn't even tell him where to switch it off. It's just in that moment, it's like immediate pushback. Like, I'm not letting myself record. Right? That's something you have to explain to your US boss or you know, if you have that. They might not necessarily understand it. So that's the regulation piece. Now, another important one, and I mentioned it, that trust is how you sell over potentially your latest feature and function. I think early in the market, credibility is important, and your logo doesn't matter that much. So don't be afraid when you have an amazing solution to go into a new market and there is someone with a big logo, because that big logo might not matter as much as you think. We had, and you know, especially when I worked for these scale-ups, we had an example was a Polish oil and gas major in Poland, and the way we got access to them was essentially by having a very small boutique consulting partner. They had like 10 consultants, but the brother of the founder from that consulting company was married to the EA of the CEO, right? Worked. So borrow the trust until you build it your own. I think that's the key message. And you know, have analysts or local influencers who really vouch for you, and they can do much more than potentially an entire brand campaign you run from the outside. So that's a key one here. Now, quick look into how the others did it. And obviously, all these ones are big names, and you all know them well. But they all chose very different approaches. SAP went super vertical, right? Deep vertical trust, but totally slowly, like very, very slow. Arguably, if SAP was doing real sales 20, 25 years ago, there was no Salesforce. Potentially, they would be as big as Microsoft. So that's the opportunity they left on the table, although they are doing somehow well again, because 80% of these manufacturing customers out there, they all have ERP in their backbone, and that's nothing you can just kick out. Salesforce, they were amazing with the ecosystem building, whether on personal level through their Trailblazer program, whether through the biggest business app store in the world, but that they created this massive ecosystem where everybody was doing, Salesforce, and everybody knows the big event in San Francisco, which is, sometimes up to 200,000 people joining this Salesforce event in fall. However, their go-to-market felt very much copy-paste. Right? That's where they really lacked and where they really struggled, in my experience. ServiceNow, in comparison, they had amazing technical pre-sales people who connected super well locally with the customers. But when it came to the commercial side of the things, it was a nightmare. Their pricing is insane. If anybody understood pricing at ServiceNow, raise your hand. You will be hired right there. It's super complex. Scale-ups, on the other hand, they try to copy all of the good motions, and they do it fast, and that's great, but they often lack the good structure and the processes for that. So the best teams, obviously, take the best of all of that. They remain fast, they remain agile, and that's how you eventually land. Now, let's end with the human part. Scaling is about empathy. It's not just the process. You need to have good processes, but you need to have empathy for the country, for the buyers, for the buying process, for your customers, prospects, and so on. That is so key. You must localize your team. To wrap it a bit up, you have to localize your story, your trust building. Playbooks help, but relationships close. There is this good old African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If you translate it into the European context, it means go slower, and then you will go further. And I think that is a big takeaway of today. And if there's nothing else to take away from this session, remember that EMEA rewards those who listen and adapt wisely. Thank you. Any questions? Did I suck out the last Beyoncé energy? Or is there some juice left? Or are you hungry and I'm standing between you and lunch? All right. You will see me tonight at the party. Ask me there. Thank you.